Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hello, friends. Welcome into the podcast. Here we are, my friends. If you've been following me on Instagram or Facebook, you saw me post about this. I am extra excited about this episode because I am bringing on a world-class entrepreneur, a legend in the online marketing space. Amy Porterfield is here in this episode. And my gosh, I mean, I knew the conversation was going to be good, but I have to say, I think it exceeded my expectations. Amy is just an absolute wealth of knowledge. If you followed her brand or listened to her podcast at all, the Online Marketing Made Easy podcast, you know how much value she has to share. And although there was a bazillion things we could have talked about, I wanted to really hone in on longevity and what it takes to last as an entrepreneur. I feel like so many people focus on hustle and starting, but what about when you're a few years in or things aren't going as well as they did when you started? We cover all that and so much more in this episode. And Amy, as you'll find out, has a lot of experience in the highs and lows. You know, you see somebody as successful as she is, and you think she probably just followed the perfect path and there's just nothing but amazing day after day things that happen. But she was really open and honest in this interview about the lows and the struggles she's had in her career and how she's pushed through them. I know it's going to filter down to you and help you out in so many ways. So my gosh, I don't want to delay any longer because this conversation was so awesome. We're going to get to it. There is just a couple things I wanted to mention. Like I'd mentioned, her podcast. If you have not subscribed yet to the Online Marketing Made Easy podcast with Amy Porterfield, do it right now. Listen to this episode first and then dive over there. But it honestly, more recently, I've been listening to that show, and it's like every week, hit after hit after hit of just awesome stuff in the online entrepreneurial world. So check that out. Make sure you subscribe. And then we do talk a lot in this episode about one of her courses, which is called List Builder Society. And I recently went through that. And even as somebody who's been, in the web design and entrepreneurial world for over a decade now, this course still made a massive impact on how I build my email list and my content strategy. If you are seriously considering building your email and you need help with your content strategy and identifying your ideal clients, I cannot recommend List Builder Society enough. I am now an affiliate, I'm happy to say, so you can go to my link at joshhall.co/LBS, short for List Builder Society. That course is like a 101 deep dive into so many great things about building your email lists, identifying the right clients for you, and content. I can't recommend it enough. I highly recommend checking that out. But for right now, check out this amazing chat with the awesome, legendary Amy Porterfield. I can't wait to hear what you think and what impacts her thoughts and her experience will make on your business. So let's have some fun. Amy, welcome to the show. It is an absolute honor to have you on. Welcome. Thanks for taking some time.
I am so honored to be here. What a great experience. I'm so glad I got to know you even more. So thanks for having me.
Well, it's funny. So I have a web design community, a coaching community, and I put out a little teaser there and a couple other places online that you are going to be joining the show. And the reaction and response I got was like, it proved to me that you are legendary status as an entrepreneur and an online marketer, which is why I'm extra excited to have you on. And we were just chatting before we went live. I really would love to talk about longevity and what it takes to consistently, be in this online entrepreneurial world and not get burnt out, not fade away like so many people do. So if that sounds good, I figure that's what we'll dive into today.
I love this topic because I feel like if you work that hard to build this business and do all the things it takes to get it off the ground, you might as well be here 15, 20 years down the road. And so, but there's some things you got to do in order to keep that staying power going. So I love this topic.
Yeah. And that's what I kind of thought it'd be interesting to focus on is not necessarily the very start, which I know a lot of people ask you when I'm just starting, what do I do?
Always.
I would love to focus on like the few years into it when you get into those low points and high points. So really excited about this. I would love to start off though. I always ask my guests this question. When somebody asks you the inevitable question, what do you do? For you, Amy Porterfield, for those who don't know you, like somebody at Target, what do you say? What do you tell them?
So I tell people that I help entrepreneurs build their businesses online. That would be someone who's like at Target that has no idea who I am or about the world of online marketing. But when I talk about what I do to someone that might be a little bit more in the know, I will say that I help people take their knowledge, know-how, and skill set and turn that into a profitable digital course that they can launch over and over again. But when I do that last part to someone who has no clue, they look at me like I'm a little bit weird and I might have two heads. So I keep it pretty general that I help people build businesses online.
Okay, because that could even work for like a grandma or something, right?
Exactly.
That's
or like
where
my dad who still doesn't totally understand what I do.
Yeah, exactly. I have such a hard time saying what I do now as a course creator, as a coach, as a podcaster, as a YouTuber now. It's such a hard question. So I'm always curious about what people say.
Yeah.
Now, let's. I don't want to stay in the beginning years too long, but for those who don't know you, Amy, or maybe aren't familiar with your story, where did your entrepreneurial journey start? Where did it all begin for you?
So it's such a great question because I actually never, ever thought that I would be an entrepreneur. Like I was in corporate since I got out of college. And so I always thought I would climb that corporate ladder and get that corner office and be a VP somewhere. And I love security. So I thought that's going to feel really good. I get the benefits, I get the regular paycheck, I get the accolades, like bring it on. I was a corporate girl for life. And then long story short, when I was working at Tony Robbins, I was about year 6. I was the director of content development. And I started to hear all the things that Tony taught. I started to really let it sink in, being your own boss, being an entrepreneur, having that freedom, and then started to find out different ways that people were going out on their own. And something just hit me. And I thought, I want it. I want the freedom. I want to do something different. I want to teach online. And so that's when I kind of got that entrepreneurial bug. And about year 7 into my Robbins work, I made the big exit and started my own online business.
Gotcha. And that actually kind of leads to a question I wanted to ask you, which is, do you feel like you've always been an entrepreneur at heart and it came out, or do you feel like you had to become an entrepreneur?
I absolutely had to become an entrepreneur. So when I thought about going out on my own, because I had that itch for freedom and I wanted to be my own boss, I wanted to call the shots. I had had a boss all my life. I tease, I grew up with a really strict father, and then I got into corporate and had all these usually male bosses, and I didn't know what it was to think on my own. So I started to want and desire that. But I looked at one of my girlfriends that I worked with at Robbins, and I said, "You're a writer. You could go and freelance and be a writer and do your thing. I have no skill set that would lend itself to be my own boss." I honestly believe that. And she looked at me and she's like, "What are you talking about? You could take all these skills and move it into your own business." But at the time, it felt very foreign. So anyone that's listening that thinks I don't know if I have what it takes, I am not a natural entrepreneur. I kind of just taught myself how to be one. So I think anyone can teach themselves how to move into that entrepreneurial world.
I'm glad to hear that, honestly, because I think that's where a lot of people tend to limit themselves. Is they're like, I'm just not this person. I can't communicate well. I'm not good on camera. That's a biggie, especially nowadays. A lot of the people that I teach are web designers. Most web designers don't get into the game to be on camera. They want to be behind a computer. So that's actually why I'm extra passionate about talking about communication and being on camera and just putting yourself out there. But it's good to know that you came from that world, because to be honest, Amy, I would think the polar opposite. Knowing your brand now, and because like I mentioned before we went live, I was a little more recent to the Amy Porterfield brand and your stuff. I'm a super fan. I'm listening to you every day now, but I'm a little later. So I didn't see that progression in your journey, whereas a lot of people, and maybe that's kind of interesting for you. I know the same is for me. A lot of people are like, "How are you so good on camera?" I'm like, look at some of my videos from 4 years ago. You'll see a very different Josh.
Yes, I have so many of those videos. I used to do more YouTube than I do now. And I've got this one video. I have super short hair. I am very kind of quiet. I'm like, who is that girl? I was kind of quiet, kind of timid. I'm pretty sure I was reading notes that were on my computer screen. And I remember thinking, I am not cut out for this video thing. I hated video in the first few years. When Facebook Live first came out, that's when I know I've been around for a while, because Facebook Live wasn't around when I came on the scene. But when it became a thing, I prayed it would be really unsuccessful and not work out, so I wouldn't have to do Facebook Live. These days, I do like 5 Facebook Lives a week.
I was just going to say, I always see.
Yeah. I would have never believed that. So it just takes time. I mean, I've been in it for almost 14 years, so you got to be patient with yourself.
Yeah. So when did you start? When did you start your own business? Was that
2010 officially.
10. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So how many years is that? So
12 right now officially, but
okay,
sounds like
so 2009 is when I left Robbins, but I don't count 2009 because it was a little bit of a shaky year. I had like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So 2009 when I left, but 2010 is when I officially had my first full year. So 13 years.
Is it safe to say you fumbled into it, or did you start, and this bleeds into this topic of longevity, I feel, because I did not start my business and go like, I'm going to start my web design business and here's my 5-year plan. Like a lot of web designers and web entrepreneurs I know, I just fumbled into it. I don't know if you know this, Amy, but I was a cabinet maker by day, working on tour bus customizing shops, and I was a drummer in a rock band at night. And then
my goodness.
I got laid off in 2009, and I started doing graphic design for my band. And I was playing a festival, and somebody asked me how much I would charge to design their t-shirt. And it was like a light bulb moment for me that started this career for me into graphic design and eventually web design. But I say that to say I fumbled into this. I did not start and go for it. Was it the same for you, or were you a little more organized and tactful when you started?
First of all, I love that you and I both started in 2009. So that's really cool. So, we're kind of OGs now. Like, we've been around for a while. I remember when I felt young in this industry. I do not feel young anymore, for the record. But okay, so I did not know what the heck I was doing. It's really interesting. I always knew I wanted to create digital courses and teach what I knew to the masses, meaning I knew I didn't love one-on-one work. And I knew I wanted to teach through digital courses from day one, but I had no idea how to do that on my own. So when I left Robbins and went out on my own, I needed to make money quickly. I did not save a bunch of money. So I started to take one-on-one clients, and I did social media for small businesses.
Okay.
And so it was like a service-based business. I had 1 or 2 clients before I left, so I had a little bit of momentum, and I started to take these clients. And soon I was 2 years in with about 8 to 10 clients and hated the business I created. I didn't like working one-on-one. I had horrible boundaries. I said yes to everything these customers of mine wanted, and I felt resentful toward them. And I thought, this is not the business I thought I would create. And where the heck is this freedom? Like sitting on a beach, drinking a Mai Tai, typing on my laptop. Where is that? Like, that's not happening in my world. So I got really scared that maybe I made a big mistake. And then I thought, wait a second, what if I change my business model? So 2 years into it, I changed my business model to do just digital courses, and I found my groove. But 2 very messy years, 2011, I went into debt. That's how really messy it was. And then by 2012, finally found my groove.
So this is really common, maybe not on that level, but I have seen a lot of business owners over the years, just as an observer. I essentially went from being a freelancer, web designer, to being a business owner, and now I consider myself an entrepreneur. But I've seen a lot of people have a lot of success and fire in the beginning, and then there's always this like dip. And whether it's a month, whether it's 2 weeks, or whether it's like a year or longer, I always tell my students when they're in this dip, just keep persistent, stay there, all the things that it sounds like you went through, because it does sound like it's really common. Like no matter who you are, where you are, it's always like, it's like a roller coaster. You get going, and then there's always a weird dip in there. Have you seen that in a lot of people that you've worked with as well?
I'm glad you brought that up. Now that I think about it and working with my students, absolutely, but I never identified it like that. And I don't know why it happens, because you're right. 2010, I made more than what I made in corporate. 2011, I literally went backwards. And maybe it's because in the beginning, we take on everything. We say yes to anything. We are hustlers. But that gets you to a point that you start making mistakes. You're a little bit messier. You're rushing things, and things kind of can fall apart pretty quickly. And I think you got to feel that pain And you're right, stick with it. So then you can figure out how to get out of it. But you also learn what you do not like. Like I am very clear what I do not like in terms of how to run a business. So I think you need to figure that stuff out in the very beginning.
Gosh, that's very well said. That's sound advice for anyone, I think, especially early on, like if this has not happened yet, because just know it's going to happen. You're not alone. But even for folks like me who've been in it for over a decade now, I've definitely learned to try to avoid that. I was going to ask this later on, but I think now's a good time for this, Amy. You look at you, and I'm saying this for everybody who's for any successful entrepreneur who's, a leader in this space. It seems like Amy and her team everything's just firing on all cylinders. It seems like everything's going awesome. Although you're very open about the things that you go through. And my question would be, what are some tips that you have when you do go through those rough patches? And I think you mentioned more recently, there's a bit of a rough patch in your business. And I actually ended the year off last year, like gangbusters, like best 2 months I've ever had, November, December. January and February this year were two of my lowest months since I started this brand. So I'm still learning that too. Like when you go through those low patches, what's some of your tips and advice for people to get through those low patches?
I love this question because there's no way to avoid those rough patches and they're going to happen. So you and I have been in business for a really long time and we're still experiencing those. 2021 was my least favorite year in business in terms.
Really?
Yeah, it just 2019 and 2020 gangbusters, like the biggest years I've ever had. And 2021, it just, I had moved from California to Nashville. I got into a crazy depression / anxiety thing that I've talked very publicly on my own podcast, and everything just felt hard last year. So it was one of those years that I literally would love to just erase. But I also, if you go back a few years, I was in my business for, 3 or 4 years, and I decided to take on a partner. And so there was a guy that was in a mastermind with me that's so incredibly smart. We got together, we had this idea, why don't you come into my business, be a 50-50 partner, and we'll do this together. And so we did, things exploded. We did amazing, amazing things together. And then it got to a point a few years in that I realized this isn't a good fit for me anymore. I felt like I was giving away a lot of just myself. I was letting him kind of call the shots and run. And that really is a reflection of some work I needed to do for myself. But I was ready to end the partnership and it got messy. And without getting into a lot of the details, we weren't sure how we were going to separate this company. But in my mind, I'm like, I birthed this company. This is my baby. And I thought I was going to lose it. And so this went over for about a year where we had to figure out how to go our separate ways. And I cried a lot. Days I did not want to get out of bed because I thought I had messed up and I was going to lose the thing that was so incredibly important to me. Long story short, we were definitely able to come to, after a year, an agreement and went our separate ways. But that experience, what I took away from that, and to answer your question about, what do you do through the hard times? I had to find the people in my life that would support me through it. So there were a few people on my team, and then of course my husband, that I confided in, that I checked in with, that checked in with me. You can't do this all alone. Entrepreneurship can be so incredibly lonely if you let it. So I got on the phone. I told my friends or those closest to me, I'm really struggling. I'm really afraid right now. I went to my mentor, people that have gone before me and had success, a few of them, and I confided in them and got advice. So don't be afraid to ask for advice, ask for help, reach out to people that you know will love you through it, because you should not have to go through the hard times in your business alone. So that's tip number one.
I was just going to ask, so was that last year? Is that right?
No,
the
partnership thing was 2018. It ended.
Okay, a few years ago. Okay.
Yeah, thank God.
Gotcha.
It's in my past.
Well, I was just going to say, because I definitely didn't. If that was the case last year, I did not see that. If it makes you feel any better though, Amy, in 2021, that's when I was really exposed to your stuff and made a massive impact on me and my family. I'm a student of yours now in your List Builder Society course, which I highly recommend for everybody listening. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that makes the year better.
It does. It actually makes me feel really great because even when I was going through really hard times last year, someone like you, who is such a superstar, found my stuff valuable. I mean, that is incredible. So I guess that's such a great lesson for people listening. You can be open. You can share your challenges. You can do all that stuff. That doesn't mean that your business has to come to a standstill, that you still can't add value. And every day I think it's not about me, it's about those that I serve. So how can I share in a way that will resonate with them, but also still continue to move forward and do the things that I do best? And so I think we can all get through hard times, but still allow our businesses to thrive and serve people.
Here's what's funny about that. Like I mentioned, end of 2021, crazy numbers for me.
That's so incredible. I'm jealous. That's so great.
For me. But beginning of 2022, not so great numbers. But here's the dichotomy of that. End of 2021, I didn't get that many impactful messages saying you've, changed my life. Here's where I'm at. I got more in the beginning of this year. In 2022. So in a way, it was more fulfilling. The numbers weren't as good, but I was more fulfilled day to day with what I'm doing with my students and my coaching community. So I guess I kind of cut you off. You said there was one tip there. Is that another tip though, that you have to listen to your students and the people you're helping to help you get through those rough times?
Absolutely. I love that you bring that up. I have a box in my office of cards, physical cards that I get at my PO box that people are just saying, thank you. I appreciate it. I applied this. This is what happened. And I keep those cards close by. And on the really tough days, and you can bet I did this in 2021, the tough days, I would open it up and remind myself, Amy, you're doing good in this world. You are adding value, and each person is a human being that counts. And so yes, let your students remind you of why you're in it and why you do what you do. I think that's a huge piece of it. And the other thing I'll share real fast is when you're going through some hard times, let's say conversions are down, your webinars aren't doing as well, you're not getting as many clients as you hoped, or like in your situation, you came off of 2 great months and then 2 great months, not so great. And you can quickly go to, I'm not relevant anymore. I'm not as powerful as I used to be in my industry. I've lost it. My best years are behind me. All these crazy thoughts. And you cannot believe everything you think. It's a motto I live by. I have to remind myself of this daily because I can go some dark places in my head. You cannot believe everything you think. And just because it's a thought, what I've learned is to say, okay, so yeah, I've got that thought, but I also can prove it otherwise. I'm always looking for reasons to prove that that's not true if it's a negative thought. And then I just move on. I don't beat myself up over those thoughts. I don't believe them, but they're there. And you've got to remind yourself they never go away. 13 years in, they're still there.
That's honestly well, it sucks to hear that because I know that's what we're all in for. But at the same time, I love hearing that because it tells me that you are human, Amy. Even at your level, you go through it just like we go through it. And I do think, and again, you do such a good job online, I feel, of being transparent and real, where that's not the case with a lot of entrepreneurs. But you can still see somebody like yourself and feel like Amy's just so far ahead of where I am. And I'm feeling these thoughts and it's just me. It's like, I feel alone in this. But it's honestly good to know that everyone goes through these feelings and these thoughts. And the numbers might be different, but at the end of the day, the core problems and struggles seem to be the same as far as good months, bad months, what you do through them.
Absolutely. And you're giving me such a compliment, even though you don't know it, to say you're so transparent and open, because I haven't always been. I actually used to kind of get called out a little bit. And probably year 4 or 5, people are like, you never share anything personal. And I come from corporate thinking everything needs to be buttoned up and professional and only talk about work. And then I realized
email signature that says warmest regards.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly. Yeah. That's the world I come from. And then I realized, that doesn't work on social media. No one wants to see the polishy, shiny part of you all the time. And so I don't know where I learned this, but I really do subscribe to this. I typically, when I want to share my challenges and my struggles, I tend to wait until it's a scab, and instead of sharing from an oozy wound that I'm still in. Now, once in a while, I will share when it's a oozy wound, kind of still open, kind of still fresh, but I share just a little and don't go down a rabbit hole because I have nothing to offer except I'm struggling. But what I love to do is share the scabs where I struggled. Here's what it felt like. Here's what it looked like when I was in it. It wasn't that long ago, but I found some ways to move past it. And I want to share that with you. Then I feel like I can share the truth, but also share value as well. I think I'd rather hear from people's scabs so I can get the value, what to do instead, versus always just the oozy wounds where there's like, you've left me raw and I can't do anything. So that's typically like the philosophy I use with transparency.
So it's like sharing something that you just learned from as opposed to like venting what you're going through, which is what a lot of people do on social media. And it's also different. Wild. It gets a little wild. That's a nice way to put it. It's also different than you saying like, here's a lesson I learned 10 years ago that you went through. It's like, it just happened, which I think, so we're recording this on April 19th. I'm going to get this out in a couple weeks after we record because my audience is so pumped to hear from you. But I think in this latest episode of your podcast, you mentioned you just recently went through a bit of a kind of a rough sort of season in your business with a team member switching roles and stuff. Mm-hmm. So for me, that puts me at ease to know, like, even at your level, again, you're still going through challenges. It's not like it's daiquiris on the beach every day and there's no problems, which is, I think you're hitting on an interesting point right now, Amy, which is, and we've talked about this a lot on the show recently, the more transparent and less guarded you are, the better you'll flourish in the online world now. Because like you mentioned, you come from corporate. I do not come from corporate. So for me, it was like I came from the opposite world. I came from like being so transparent that people were like, Josh just shared what he made this month. What is wrong with him? And so, but it's very different now. Like, and that's actually another question I had for you. So you got started in, 2008, 2009, 10. What was the landscape like in online entrepreneurship then as opposed to now? I mean, 10 years later, 12 years later, completely different, especially as an online woman entrepreneur. I have all girls in my house. You can probably see right here. I got a wife, 2 little girls, 4 and 2. I do have my first boys on the way coming October. So I've got a little man joining us, but that looked very different in the online world back then, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, such a great question. So in 2008, you're right, is when I started to explore this world. 2009, when I went out on my own, kind of, there were hardly any women doing what I do. Like I could name 3 maybe that I remember, like really prominent up there with the boys. It was a good old boys club. And when I came on the scene, it was such a good old boys club, like the guy standing in front of Ferrari and talking about how they never work and all that good stuff. Right. And it just felt really hokey to me, but I didn't know any better. And quite honestly, I learned from the guys in the beginning. So I really can't knock them, although it seemed a little cheesy, some of how they were marketing. I learned from them because there weren't that many women doing what I'm doing. Also, social media was very different back then. Selfies and stories and lots of video. That was really not the norm. When I first started doing webinars, no one showed their face. In fact, back then it was like teleseminars. Remember teleseminars? So that was very different. So what I've learned along the way is transparency has become the norm. Back then it was absolutely not. And also people weren't just sharing for the sake of sharing. So I really had to learn to open up because back then it was a whole different world.
Definitely the sharing aspect. I think that's even from my experience. And again, I don't consider myself, or I didn't, an entrepreneur until really the past couple years because I was just a freelancer and I didn't listen to any entrepreneurial stuff, no videos. It was all just learning web design. That was it. That was my thing. And then when I became a business owner, I started getting exposed to authors like Seth Godin and others on the business side of things. And then more recently, again, I feel like a bit of a baby in the entrepreneurial world because it is where it is now. But I have to say, going back to the question that I asked you earlier, do you feel like you became an entrepreneur? Were you, did you have an entrepreneur inside you? I thought I was going to be right in alignment with you, Amy, as far as my feeling, but I actually think I'm opposite. I think I had an entrepreneur inside of me that is now like more pumped and more stoked and more fired up than you can imagine because I am like built for online entrepreneurship.
I love to hear that. It's got to feel great.
It feels so good. And I'm not saying that boastfully. I'm saying there is this world. And I think this breeds into longevity and the idea of doing this for the long haul. And I was going to ask you this later. Let me ask you this now. Are you like, how excited are you about the landscape now of online entrepreneurship? Because personally, like I just said, it is like built for me. I was not a great student. I wasn't a bad student, but I hated being in school. I hated it. I hated high school. I hated taking tests. I got a D in typing, Amy, and I type all the time now. And I do more copywriting and like coaching via typing than I ever, that's what I do. So I am not made for the academic corporate world. Online entrepreneurship, though, right in alignment with my personality type. So, putting it to the question to you, how do you feel about the landscape now? And does it excite you that there's so many opportunities now with whether it's courses, freelancing, coaching, whatever it is?
I am so excited about what I'm seeing and what's coming down the pipeline. And I say that because there's so many opportunities, looking back at when I first got started versus now, you can get in a whole lot easier. You've got more options for business models. We were just talking the other day, my friend and I, about influencers. And I'm like, can you believe those people are making tons of money doing what they're doing? 10 years ago, that didn't even exist. That was like a wild position. But I remember when social media manager was kind of wild and weird and like, what do you do? So it's evolved so very much. And I think what I'm most excited about is that so many different types of personalities can shine online. If you're willing to put yourself out there, if you're willing to get on video, if you're willing to, lend your voice to your podcast and do that kind of thing, your life can be dramatically different. So I'm working on a book called 2 Weeks Notice, and it's about how to quit your job and start an online business. And the reason I'm writing that book is because there are so many people, and this is different than you and I, but so many people that don't even know this world exists. Like they don't get how exciting this is. And I think I'm most excited because I get to call the shots. I get to be my own boss. I get to be creative in the way I want to be creative. And that will never, ever happen in a corporate job. So I think there's so much opportunity, so much excitement, so many different things you can do. And you don't I was a great student. You and I are very different, but probably why we like each other, because I like people that are different than me. I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur. I was a very good student and I was very into the professional world. And then I got to come in here and I got to shake that up, where your personality lends perfectly well to entrepreneurship. And so we're very different, but we both are thriving. That's what I love about this landscape.
Yeah, Amy in high school would have been like, that Josh guy's kind of weird. He's got spiky hair. He likes really
I probably would have had a
music.
crush on you. I was like, he's a bad boy.
He's a bad boy. I don't know if that was the persona I had, but I'll take it.
Let's just pretend. Let's pretend.
There we go. Yeah, we'll go with the bad boy. That'll be my new tagline under my email. The bad boy web designer. Now you mentioned something there about who you help, and how, honestly, I guess one thing I'm curious about: what the heck did courses look like in 2010?
Oh, yes.
That had to be, you talk about the level of and barrier of entry now, so much easier than back then. Like, did you have to hire people to build a custom site for doing courses? Did you have to have a team? What did that look like?
So I did have to hire a videographer in the very beginning. We didn't have smartphones the way we have it now, nor was there tons of equipment known to just a newbie that you could just do it yourself. So it was more expensive back then. I remember hiring this crew, and also the platforms were coded. You needed to know coding in order to make most of the course platforms work. I know nothing about coding. I still don't. And so I'd have to hire that out as well. So there were a lot of people I had to hire to make a course work. And also back in the day, it was really popular to show, you remember the array of DVDs, even though you were not getting any DVDs in the mail, we would show it on our sales pages with big, bright yellow buttons and very obnoxious arrows and all of that. So internet marketing was very obnoxious back in the day, but also way more difficult to get a course up and running. Now I tell my students, you do not need to hire anyone. Keep it simple. Do it all yourself. And the technology allows us to do that today.
Yeah, it really does. That's one reason I'm extra excited and even my audience who are all fairly savvy, there's still a lot that you have to learn, but luckily it's so much easier. Even from when I got started in 2010, as a website designer, I was hand coding stuff. Thank God I don't have to do that anymore, because that's not what I'm best at either. But I think it sounds like even back then, I guess the question I have as far as this topic of, sticking with this and not burning out, not giving up, how important was your why back then to get through those tough technical things? Because this is outside of like bad numbers and rough months. This is like, what does it take to get through all the challenges that are going to be in your face as an entrepreneur with tech stuff, with team, with marketing? Like, it sounds like your why was the freedom you wanted for yourself and for finances, whatever that looked like. But then did you have your ICA? This is something you teach in your List Builder Society course. Again, everyone, I think that's like a 101 marketing course that I feel like everyone should go into. But you talk about your ICA, ideal client avatar, customer avatar, you want to call it. Did you have that in place then? And did that help you as like your why to keep going?
So in the beginning, it's funny you should mention whys, because I have a very strong feeling about people creating their why to start their business. And I believe it changes over time. And so I encourage my students that when you're choosing a why in the beginning, if it's really, quote, selfish, totally fine. So you're right. You're a great listener, because my why was all about freedom. I wanted to call the shots. I wanted to work when I wanted to work, where I wanted to work, and how I wanted to work. It was all focused on me. I wanted a different kind of life. When I worked at Robbins, I traveled probably 250 days out of the year, and I had just gotten married to Hobie and I never saw him. So my why was I wanted to control my life. I wanted to create my own destiny. Now, if you fast forward, let's say 10 years from then, my why dramatically changed. It changed into, there's a woman in a cubicle right now. She does not know that there's this whole world out there that she could call the shots. She knows she's made for more, but she feels stuck. And if, let's say, she falls upon my podcast or my book that's coming out, and she's like, wait a second, what is this world? And it gives her permission to try something new, her whole life can change. She is my why. I think about her every day. She wasn't even in my radar 10, 15, or 12 years ago. So to answer your question, absolutely, my why of wanting freedom pulled me through for many, many, many years, especially when I started to doubt myself and things didn't go right. I had to come back to it over and over again. But I didn't know who my ICA was. My ideal customer avatar, no clue. I literally needed a few years to figure that out.
Well, and as you were talking, it made me think, I just wonder, this is just outsider perspective, listening to you talk about that. I wonder if you didn't really understand your ICA back then because you weren't far removed from that person. Like maybe it took a few years after becoming a successful entrepreneur that you're like, now I can teach this. Cause that's how I felt. Like right now, I don't feel like I can teach course creators that well because I'm in it. I'm in the thick of being an online course creator, community builder, podcaster. Now I can teach web design left and right because I did that for a decade and I know all the challenges, all the mistakes I made. My hairline actually used to be right here, but that's web design receding.
I hear you, brother.
So I know I want to help people keep their hair. I think that's what I should put on my website.
That's a great tagline.
That is a great tagline. We've come up with something. I knew I was going to get some marketing benefits with chatting with you.
Genius there.
Right? But no, you're right. Your why changes. It's interesting. So I have two daughters. My oldest daughter, Bria, I don't know if you know this, Amy, if you got a chance to check out my story or anything, but she has some developmental delays. And we were in the NICU for 2 months when she was born. So it was a huge, challenging time me and my family went through. And she's doing awesome. She's the sweetest. She is literally the sweetest thing in the world. It's not an opinion. It is a fact.
I believe it.
Oh my gosh. She's like the sweetest thing you can imagine. Now my little one's a firecracker, but that's another story, but she's sweet too. But I say that to say it's changed my why. Because my why now is I want to help homeschool her. And that was not in the picture a few years ago before we had her. Like my why was building finances, building the business. Now my why has shifted from, of course, finances are a part of it, but now I'm thinking about like the day to day. What do I want our weeks to look like and our days to look like? So here, actually later this year, we can start homeschooling her because we just don't trust with the delays that she has and developmental stuff that she'll be well taken care of in a public system. So anyway, I say that to say that's my new why.
Yeah.
Has your why changed at all, or has it always, since then, even when you found that out, has that stayed consistent?
I think, I still always want that freedom. Like I don't believe anyone could ever hire me at this point. So I've got that running through my blood. But when I transitioned to it's that woman in the cubicle, that one fired me up even more. And so I love that you've allowed your why to change because it becomes bigger and better as it evolves. So I think everyone listening, just let your why be whatever it is and get crystal clear. It's got to feel good. It's got to like hit you in that gut, like this is it. But then be open to the fact that you will start to experience new things and really show up for other people, like you are for your sweet little girl. I am for the women in my audience. That evolves over time. But until you're in it doing the thing, it's not going to evolve. So all you got to do, anyone that's like, I don't know if my why is good enough or I'm not clear, just get to work. It comes for sure.
And I should say there's a personal aspect and a professional aspect. Personally, yes. That's my biggest why. Professionally, of course, my why are my students, the web designers who are very similar for you, Amy. They're working a full-time job and they want to have freedom, and web design and this awesome online world of entrepreneurship is there for them. So that's, similarly, that's my why for them. So I guess it bears worth having like the personal and professional why.
I love that.
There at all times, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. And something I wanted to mention this earlier, something you hit on is to keep the why like top of center, front of mind. So
always.
Today, my family and I are 1 month out as time of recording this we're building a new home. So I'm going to have a new office set up here soon.
Fun.
The first thing I'm going to do is make a wall of awesome, which is going to have like testimonials, little notes that students send me with like, there's so many things that I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Then I never think about it again. Yep. And recently I'm like, Josh, shame on you. Like keep that stuff front and center. So I have like a folder of just awesome stuff that I just drop in there, screenshot it, drop it in there. I'm going to take the next step in my new office setup, which is going to be to like literally put it on the wall. So I don't know. I just wanted to share that because I feel like it's one thing to know it's there in your computer. It's another thing to see it and
every day.
Like, yes.
When you get that up, take a picture and put it on social. I want to see it. I
will 100% do that. Cool. We've also talked a lot about work ethic in this. You and I are hustlers at heart, I think. Like I came from a blue collar background. I'm good with getting my work boots on and going. I think a lot of people have an issue like getting started and getting to work. My issue is to stop working and I'm sure as an online entrepreneur,
I totally relate.
Right? A lot of people leave the 9 to 5 and then it's like, welcome to the 24/7. Yes. Don't get on your laptop on Friday night when you're spending time with your family. So I've had to combat that. Obviously, as a family man now, I've really learned a lot about work-life balance and work-life integration. But hustle, what are your thoughts on hustle? And I think there's a change in the entrepreneurial landscape now where hustle is, people are like, okay, hold on.
Like a dirty word.
Yeah, it's a dirty word. I got some thoughts on this, but what are your thoughts on hustle?
Okay, I'd love to know your thoughts too. So I recently did a podcast episode where actually I've done 2 episodes where I've talked about this. And what I've shared is that 2 things. Number 1, I absolutely believe you have to hustle in the first few years. I don't know any other way around it. You got to say yes to most things to figure out what you like and what you're good at and what you don't like and what you don't want to do. And also you don't know if it's a good opportunity or not until you get in there and try it. And so in the first few years, that's a little bit of like a little desperation. Like I got to make it work, especially if you've left a 9 to 5 job. Hustle is just part of the game. And I believe that that is just how it is. Other people could totally disagree with me, and that's fine. However, what I did wrong and what I've admitted to is I didn't know to get out of the hustle mentality. So when I started teaching people how to create courses and grow their email list and do webinars, it came from a hustle mentality. Like do what you got to do, work the hours you got to work. You got to work on weekends, you do it because this means a lot to you. And then I experienced burnout. Like I was like, I don't even want to do this. And I know why. I've seen so many people come and go in this industry. And I know why, because they pushed themselves so freaking hard that it got to a point that they're like, this is not even worth it. I don't even like this. Luckily, I never got to that place. I've always loved it in one way or another. But what happened is my husband's like, I never see you. My little boy at the time, I went to a baseball game and he was practicing. It was practice. I thought he wasn't even paying attention to me. I'm on my laptop in the bleachers, boom, 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 like typing away. Afterwards, I was walking him to the car and I said, you did so good. And he said, how do you know? You were working the whole time.
Oh.
And it's like yesterday, and this is many, many years ago.
Oh, with the dagger.
It was horrible. I could have just cried in that moment. I probably went home and cried. So I've experienced the hustle and the burnout, and I do not think it serves you long term. So, we talked about how do you stay in this that many years and beyond? You have to get out of the hustle mode. I really do believe it. I believe you can make something amazing without killing yourself over it. And the more you value time away from work, I believe you show up better. So one of the things, like to put this into motion, we moved to a 4-day work week. A year ago,
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, of 20 full-time employees that are across the whole US, we moved everyone to a 4-day work week. So we work Monday through Thursday, regular hours, 8-ish hours, and we do not work Friday, Saturday, Sunday unless we're in a launch. And it changed everything. It changed everything in terms of how I feel about work, how I feel about my team. And my team is so grateful for the opportunity to be with their family. So I'm not a huge fan of hustle, but I do think it's necessary in the beginning.
I agree. Totally back that up and saying in the beginning, you're going to have to do it. There's no other way around. It's going to be a busy season. But you asked my thoughts on it. My thoughts are it's seasonal.
Yes.
Like, again, I love hustling. Some of my favorite times of my creative juices are to like build a course, but I know it's very time intensive. It's exhausting. Even though I love it, it doesn't mean that it's not exhausting.
Right.
And I've learned that there are certain seasons where, and I'll just let my wife know, like I'm creating a course, I'm recording. The next couple of weeks, hustle time. I'm going to be working a little more. The couple of weeks after that, let's go to the zoo on a Tuesday. Let's do this, or whatever. So I've learned to like just balance the hustle. And then, but more importantly, be intentional about like scheduling that out. And the idea of a 4-day work week, that was completely off. That's very intriguing. I know a lot of people are doing that. For me personally, I've revamped my day-to-day and week-to-week to where Mondays are no calls and it's just open. I can work a lot if I want, if I'm in a hustle mode, but I can also be creative. I can write. I'm going to start writing my first book next month. So I'm super excited about that.
Writing.
So Mondays are probably going to be writing day. Tuesdays are calls. Wednesdays occasionally will be calls. Thursdays are also I have a couple call segments, but that's it. And then Fridays are usually half days at most. So it's a very, I've given myself freedom in my day to day, but that's the term that everyone has to remember. You have to like set that up. I'm giving it. And would you back me up, Amy, in saying that to give people permission to set your week to what you want to do? I feel like so many people need to hear that and just do it. Like craft your week. That's the beauty about doing online entrepreneurship. You can control it.
It's so true. Sometimes I get back into hustle mentality and I don't even realize it. And I'm working myself to the bone, and I'll complain to my husband, Hobie, and say like, I feel like I don't even have a minute. And he says, you should talk to your boss about that one.
Oh, go Hobie. What a great line.
Right? I am calling the shots. So if I'm complaining about my schedule, it is me. I have a really good friend, super prominent in her industry, and she was complaining about her calendar. And I said, based on personal experience, you control that calendar. You're saying it's your virtual assistant setting up meetings. You're saying people are putting things on your calendar. You're the boss at the end of the day. And we have to remember that. And also absolutely agree with you. Set up your week the way you want to live it, because you will not be in that industry in 10 years if you hate your weeks and you hate the amount of time you work. And I think there's this FOMO. Like if I don't say yes to everything, if I'm not working all the time, I'm going to miss out on something. And the peers that I admire the most are those that literally have enough confidence to say, I'm going to do what I want, say no to the things I don't want to do, and I will be just fine. They tend to thrive. There's something magical about it.
I just love it. You can control your day and everything you want to do. I'm actually thinking about dropping Wednesdays as call days too, and just doing Tuesdays and Thursdays. So
we do 2 days a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, no calls.
Okay, I'm in. Yeah. If Amy Porterfield tells me to try that out, I'm in. I'm action taker on that. A follow-up question with that real quick. How do you turn it off? Because even though you're not working on those days off, I mean, I imagine no team calls, no emails, but mentally, do you give yourself permission to, do content, do stuff like that? Or are you like off on those 3 days that you're off?
So that's such a great question. A lot of the times I am totally off. So I will not come upstairs. So it just so happens that my office is upstairs. I'll stay downstairs and I'll have to really make plans and make sure that I have my day set up so that I'm not finding my way upstairs for a quick call or a quick content creation or something. They're supposed to be full non-working days. Now, because I'm writing a book, I have found that there are some Fridays that I am typing away. I'm in a season. I got to get the book done. I'm on a contract, but most of the time I am not working at all.
That's awesome. I know that's the danger of having a laptop, which is, I have a laptop right here, which this is running off of. And I'm almost thinking about going with like a locked big computer. So I go to the office to work. I can't take it elsewhere.
Yes.
We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes with writing the book. But
isn't it wild though? Like we have to force ourselves not to work. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we love what we do. We're excited about it, but we also know that all work and no play is not going to serve us well.
For me, there was a like light bulb moment that it hit me. And that was probably maybe 2 or 3 years ago when, again, same thing. I wasn't stressed out working. I just really liked what I was doing. I was new into courses. Students were emailing me. I loved hearing from them. So I was on my email quite a bit. We were I'm a hockey fan. So we were watching a Blue Jackets game. And I had one daughter at the time, Bria, who was playing. And my wife was talking to me. And I was on my laptop doing email stuff. Half an hour later, I didn't know what my wife just said. I didn't pay attention to my daughter. I felt bad about that. I didn't even see what was going on in the game. And it took me a half an hour to write this email that I could have done in like 2 minutes the next morning. So that was like the moment for me. I realized I need to just stop this. Like there's occasional times I'll bring my laptop and do some stuff, but more often than not, I know when I can take that thing out and get stuff done, and I've had to control that. And like, again, kind of similarly, like I could work all the time. I need to reel that back and be intentional about it.
Intentional. I think it's a beautiful word.
Yeah. Gosh, so much good stuff here, Amy. I really feel like there's a bazillion topics I'd love to dive into. I want to be respectful of your time as we get ready to roll this up. I kind of do have one final question for you. Before we get to that though, where would you like people to go to find out more? I've mentioned your List Builder Society course. I'm actually an affiliate now, so everyone can go to joshhall.co/LBS as in List Builder Society to check that out. What's interesting, Amy, is I am not your ICA. I am not your ideal customer avatar, I don't think. However, let me just publicly say I got so much benefit out of that course. And so I actually went through your webinar and I did not initially purchase it because I kind of felt like it might be a beginner's style course.
Right.
But even with where I'm at now, because my ICA is changing a little bit into the like business realm and not just web designer realm, it actually really helped me reposition my messaging and where I'm at. So publicly, thank you for all that you put. And that course is going to be revamped soon, right?
It is.
Right?
You're going to be, I need you to be one of my testimonials because you're going to be a shining star. You take that seriously. You're 100%. Like my favorite type of student. And so I love that. I want to point something out. So I love that you're talking about ideal customer avatar and how important it is to really understand who you're serving and who you're talking to. But you are a perfect example of the magic I talk about in List Builder Society, where if you get clear who you're marketing to and you get your message around them and you resonate with them, you're not going to serve everybody, but there will be outliers. There will be people out there that just something you said resonated with them, your teaching style. They will find you even if they're not your ICA. So don't worry that you're leaving everyone out. You're not. And Josh, you're a perfect example. You might not be my perfect ICA, but you found me because something I did resonated with what you need. And so it's such a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that. I'm on the cusp. It won't be by the time your episode goes live, but I'm actually going to rebrand my podcast. Right now, it's the Josh Hall Web Design Show. I'm about to rebrand it to the Web Design Business Podcast with Josh Hall to just move myself out of it just a little bit and then make it very clear, web design business. So we're not talking about how to code on this podcast. We're talking about business and strategy and entrepreneurship with web design as a key part of that. So I appreciate that.
I love your niche. I think it's so beautiful that it's web design, but also business building. And that little tweak makes all the difference. I'm excited about that. So anyway, I so appreciate you talking about List Builder Society because it's a program I'm really proud of. And I do believe that everything gets easier in your business when you grow an email list. So Thank you for being an affiliate. I hope a lot of people listening want to take us up on the offer because it's amazing. But when you asked, where can people find me? Thank you for that question. I'm all about my podcast, Online Marketing Made Easy. If you love Josh's show, you might like my show as well.
Let me tell you something about your podcast, Amy. So I saw you on a couple summits that I was a part of. It was the Brendon Burchard's Influencer Summit. That was my initial big exposure to you. I mean, I had, of course, heard your name. And I was like, I like what Amy said in this. And then I went through this summit, the video summit about Luria. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, Luria's. Yes.
Yeah, whatever her summit was. I feel so bad. I forget what that was called. But a lot about video and lives and going live and stuff. And as somebody who's doing live more now this year, it's like my big thing this year is live video. Really resonated with me. I say all that to say, then I got onto your podcast. And let me tell you about Amy's podcast. Definitely subscribe right now to Online Marketing Made Easy because every episode recently has been like hit after hit after hit. My gosh, the one you did with the finance guy, Anthony.
Anthony O'Neill. Love him.
Oh my gosh, everybody, after this, of course, drop what you're doing and listen to episode 451 of Amy's podcast about money mindset. So good. Anyway, your podcast is definitely a resource I'm passing around.
Josh, that means the most to me. I literally want to put you in my pocket and take you around with me because you make a girl feel really loved. So
well, I was going to say, we're in Columbus, Ohio. I have 2 golden retrievers too, to top it all off.
Oh, I could bring Scout over.
They want to know now. They're cute blondes. I've got Daisy Lou and Lily Bell. I want to know if Scout's going to be on his best behavior for a play date.
He might not be. He might be a little sassy, but I think we need to get them together.
Okay, deal. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, Amy. My final question for you is, for the people who are still in that season, numbers aren't great. They're still in that rough patch. They're fired up. If you could just sum up one piece of advice, if you were sitting down with somebody at coffee and you were like, just do this, or, this would be my advice, what would you say to them?
If numbers aren't really great, things aren't really coming together, but you're not going to give up, of course. The number one thing I would do is say, look at your business and can you make it simpler? I'm all about a simple business. I love having just a few offers, just a few ways that I make the core of my revenue, and everything else is great, but not a necessity. So look at your business. Can you simplify it? Can you double down on that one thing that's working really well and stop spinning your wheels on 5 other things that are not? Check your ego. We say yes to a lot of things that will make us look good, but don't really bring in the revenue. So first look at what can make me revenue. Where can I double down? What can I do less of, but do it really well? And get rid of the stuff that's weighing you down. To me, that's a way to kind of open up some possibilities.
Whoo! Well said. That's why she's a legend, everybody. Amy Porterfield, thank you so much for your time. I can't believe this was an hour.
I can't either. I'm like, what? We went that long? Oh my goodness, when good conversation happens.
Hey, I hope this isn't the last time. This has been super fun. Thank you so much for your time, Amy. I'm excited to talk soon.
Thanks so much.
Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.